The courthouse in Dayton, Ohio, carried the kind of stillness that pressed on people's chests. Outside, gray clouds hung low, muting the October sun. Inside, every wooden bench was filled neighbors, reporters, and strangers drawn by curiosity. They weren't here for a celebrity trial or a political scandal. They were here for a story that had quietly captured hearts across the state. The case of State v. Raymond Haskins, the man accused of a hit-and-run that left a young mother badly injured and nearly orphaned her child. At the front, Officer Daniel Reed sat upright in his Navy uniform, hat resting on his knee. Beside him, lying obediently at his feet, was Rex, the department's best K9, a 6-year-old German shepherd with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He'd been trained to detect drugs, track criminals, and search for survivors. But today he was simply present, his leash wrapped around Daniel's hand as a reminder of duty and truth. Across the courtroom sat Melissa Warren, her hands clasped tightly together, knuckles white against the pale wood of the bench. Every muscle in her body trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of months of waiting, for justice, for closure, for something that made sense. Her left leg bore the scars from the accident, her movements careful and slow. And beside her sat the reason everyone's attention kept flicking back and forth, the reason the air felt heavy with unspoken emotion. 3-year-old Emma. She was impossibly small in the vast courtroom, a child's innocence caught in a world of laws, evidence, and punishment. She clutched a faded gray bunny, its ear torn from love rather than neglect, and stared at the front of the room with wide, curious eyes. The pink bow in her hair trembled when she moved. To most people, she looked too young to understand why she was there. But her mother knew better. Emma remembered more than anyone thought possible. When the bailiff announced the judge's entrance, everyone rose. Emma followed, mimicking the adults, her bunny tucked under her arm. The judge, an older man with silver hair and soft lines of weariness on his face, took his seat and surveyed the courtroom. His eyes rested for a brief moment on the little girl, and something softened in his expression. He'd seen criminals, victims, and liars, but rarely innocents sitting so still in a place built for justice. "Court is now in session," he said. His voice echoed against the high ceilings. The defense attorney, a slick man with an expensive suit and a confident smirk, adjusted his papers. The prosecutor nodded toward Officer Reed, signaling him to take the stand. Rex rose briefly, following his handler's movements, but sat again when commanded. His brown eyes scanned the room, alert, intelligent, and somehow aware of the tension. Officer Reed began recounting the events of that night, the 911 call, the crash on Maple Street, the overturned minivan, and the faint cries of a child echoing from the wreck. His voice was steady but quiet. He'd told this story a dozen times, but never in front of the people it had happened to. When we arrived, he said, the vehicle was smoking. The mother was unconscious. The child was restrained in her seat crying, but otherwise unharmed. Rex was the first to alert near the tree line. He found evidence suggesting someone fled the scene on foot. Melissa closed her eyes. She could still smell the smoke, the gasoline, the blur of red and blue lights flashing against her shattered windshield. She remembered reaching back for Emma, whispering her name through blood and glass. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." But what she hadn't known, what still haunted her, was that her daughter had seen more than anyone realized. From her bench, Emma's small voice broke the silence. "Doggy." It wasn't loud, just a whisper, but the word carried. Dozens of heads turned. Officer Reed paused mid-sentence, his eyes flicking toward the child. Rex perked up, ears high, tail thumping once against the floor. A judge looked over his glasses. "Is she all right, Mrs. Warren?" Melissa smiled weakly, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "She's fine, Your Honor. She recognizes the dog. The courtroom murmured softly, small chuckles, curious smiles. But Reed's heartbeat quickened. He remembered the first time he'd seen that look on Emma's face. It was the night of the accident, in the ambulance lights. She had reached for Rex, even then, eyes wide, saying something he couldn't quite catch. The prosecutor motioned for quiet and continued questioning. But as Reed described the evidence trail, Emma's gaze never wavered. She stared at Rex with the kind of focus that seemed far too old for a child. Rex turned his head slightly, sniffing the air, then let out a quiet, low whine. The sound rippled through the courtroom. Melissa tried to soothe her daughter, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart." But Emma stood up on the bench, her tiny shoes squeaking. She pointed at Rex, her voice clear this time, childlike yet full of certainty. "Doggy remembers," she said. The room froze. It was only 3 words, but the effect was immediate. The judge leaned forward, eyebrows knitting. Officer Reed blinked, his mouth parting slightly. Even the defendant turned his head, uneasy. Melissa's heart pounded. "Emma, honey, sit down." But Emma shook her head. "Doggy remembers," she repeated, louder this time. Her small face trembled, but her eyes never left Rex's. "He knows." Silence swallowed the room. Officer Reed's pulse thundered in his ears. The prosecutor hesitated before speaking. "Your Honor, the child is very young. Perhaps we can." The judge lifted a hand. "No, let her speak." It was an unusual decision, one that might have been objected to in any other case. But something in the judge's voice, something in Emma's tone, made everyone pause. Rex's gaze locked on the defendant's chair. His ears went forward, his body tense. It wasn't aggression. It was recognition. Emma pointed again, her lip quivering. "That man hurt Mommy. Doggy chased him." The defendant's lawyer shot up. "Objection. This is absurd. She's a child." But the judge didn't respond immediately. He was looking at Rex, the dog's low growl rumbling beneath the wooden floors. Melissa covered her mouth. She hadn't prepared for this. Her little girl wasn't supposed to speak. She was just there for support. Yet here she was, 3 years old, saying what no adult had dared to believe. The prosecutor glanced toward Officer Reed, who could only nod slightly. Everything Emma said matched what he'd seen through Rex's eyes that night. The judge finally cleared his throat. "We'll take a brief recess." His tone was firm but gentle. As the gavel fell, murmurs spread across the courtroom. Some whispered disbelief, others awe. The defense looked shaken for the first time. Melissa scooped Emma into her arms, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Sweetheart," she whispered, voice cracking. "How did you know that?" Emma rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "Doggy told me," she said softly. "He remembers." Officer Reed stood frozen near the witness stand, Rex pressed against his leg. He looked down at the animal, at those steady brown eyes that had seen more than humans ever could. And in that quiet moment, beneath the noise of reporters, lawyers, and whispers of doubt, he realized something profound. Maybe justice didn't always come from evidence or adult logic. Maybe sometimes it came from the unfiltered truth spoken by a child, and the silent understanding of a dog who never forgot. As the courtroom emptied, the judge remained seated, lost in thought. He stared at the spot where Emma had stood on the bench, small hand raised, voice trembling but sure. He'd seen countless testimonies, thousands of words spilled in search of truth. But none of them had ever struck him quite like hers. 3 simple words that reached beyond reason and touched something far deeper. "Doggy remembers." He whispered it under his breath, and for the first time in years, the seasoned judge felt the sting of tears. Because somehow, in that courtroom full of doubt and law, a child's voice had reminded them all truth doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it's carried by innocence and echoed by loyalty. Rain slicked the Ohio pavement in silver ribbons, the kind that make headlights blur into ghostly streaks. Melissa Warren hummed along to the radio, a soft lullaby floating through the car's quiet interior. In the rear seat, Emma slept in her booster, thumb pressed to her stuffed bunny's ear. It was 9:46 p.m. a Thursday, when everything ordinary began to unravel. Maple Street stretched ahead, a narrow two-lane road lined with sycamores already shedding their leaves. Melissa had taken that route home hundreds of times. She could drive it half asleep, and sometimes, after long nursing shifts, she nearly did. Tonight she was tired but happy. She just told Emma they would bake cupcakes for her 3rd birthday that weekend. The little girl had smiled before drifting off. Then the first set of headlights appeared behind her, far too close, too bright. Melissa frowned into the rearview mirror. The truck tailgating her was massive, its grille filling her mirror like the jaws of some mechanical beast. She tapped her brakes once, a polite warning. Instead of slowing, the truck swerved, honking twice. The sound ripped through the quiet car, startling Emma awake. "Mommy?" came the small, frightened voice. "It's okay, baby," Melissa said, keeping her eyes on the road. "He'll go around." But he didn't. The engine behind them roared. The truck accelerated, veering into the opposite lane. For a moment, Melissa thought he'd pass, but the blinding light in her window suddenly veered back toward her. She had only a heartbeat to react. The impact slammed into her from behind a violent, metallic scream. Her seatbelt locked. Emma cried out. The minivan spun, tires screeching against the wet asphalt, before it careened off the road and hit a ditch with a bone-shaking crunch. Silence followed. Then the smell burnt rubber, gasoline, rain. Melissa's head throbbed. Something warm trickled down her temple. The dashboard lights flickered red like emergency beacons. She turned, dazed. Emma was sobbing, but alive. Relief rushed through her fogged mind. "Baby, Mommy's right here," she whispered, voice shaking. Through the cracked windshield, she saw the truck still idling on the shoulder. Its driver's door opened. A man stumbled out, tall, wearing a dark jacket. He looked around nervously. For a moment, Melissa thought he was coming to help. Instead, he glanced toward her smashed car, froze and ran. Straight into the woods. Her hand reached for her phone. The screen was shattered. She pressed the horn, but it died mid-sound. Somewhere distant, thunder rolled. Then came sirens, faint but growing. Officer Daniel Reed was already on shift when the dispatch came through. Possible 10 to 50 with injury. Maple Street. He and Rex were 2 miles away. Rain lashed his windshield as he made the turn, light slicing through darkness. When they arrived, the scene looked worse than expected vehicle on its side, smoke rising. He killed the siren and jumped out. "Police!" he shouted, racing forward. "Anyone inside?" A child's cry answered. He found the rear door jammed. "Hang on, sweetheart," he murmured. With practiced motion, he wedged it open, just enough to reach through. A tiny hand clutched his glove. He pulled Emma free, wrapping her in his jacket. "Mommy's hurt," she sobbed. He handed the girl to a paramedic, then turned to the driver's side. Melissa was pinned by the steering column, but conscious. "You're going to be okay," he told her. "Help's here." She blinked through blood and rain. "He ran," she rasped. Man, dark jacket. "Woods," Reed's radio crackled. "Need K9 track east of Maple. Suspect fled scene." He glanced down. "You hear that, Rex?" The dog's ears pricked. A single command, search. And Rex bounded into the dark, nose low to the ground, tail cutting through mist like a pendulum. Reed followed with flashlight and sidearm. The woods smelled of wet leaves and exhaust. Rex barked once, sharp. Ahead, a baseball cap lay half buried in mud. Reed bagged it quickly, marking the coordinates. Tracks led deeper and vanished at the creek's edge. Whoever he was, he'd escaped, but not clean. Evidence was there. By the time Reed returned, medics had freed Melissa. She was pale but stable. Emma sat in an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket far too big for her. Rex trotted over and, unprompted, rested his head on the child's knees. She stopped crying instantly, fingers burying in his fur. Reed smiled faintly. "He likes you," he said. Emma sniffled. "Doggy saw." Reed crouched. "What's that, sweetheart?" She pointed toward the dark trees. "Doggy saw the bad man." Reed exchanged a look with the medic. Kids say things, he told himself, but something about her certainty sent a chill through him. 2 hours later, the wreck was cleared. Rain had stopped, leaving a heavy silence over Maple Street. Reed filed his report. Hit and run, driver unknown, possible evidence cap recovered, tracks lost by creek. Victims transported to St. Luke's Hospital. When he checked on them later that night, Melissa was sleeping. Emma, awake in her hospital bed, played absently with her bunny. "Hey there," Reed said quietly. "Remember me?" She nodded, eyes drooping. "Doggy?" "He's resting in the car," Reed smiled. "He worked hard tonight." She looked out the window where the K-9 unit was parked. "He remembers," she murmured. Reed didn't understand in what those words would come to mean. In the weeks that followed, investigators built a slow, frustrating case. The hat belonged to a local mechanic named Raymond Haskins, a man with 2 prior dues and a reputation for late-night drinking. But when questioned, he denied everything. Claimed his truck had been stolen that night. Without direct proof, the case wavered. Melissa attended every meeting despite her injuries. Each time she asked, "You'll catch him, right?" Reed always answered the same, "We will." But privately, he wasn't sure. Emma, however, seemed sure of something. At home, she drew pictures of a dog chasing a man in the woods. She told her mother, "Doggy saw him run." Melissa thought it was a child's way of processing trauma, until Emma pointed at the TV one evening during a news report about the case. The screen flashed Haskins's mugshot. "That's him," Emma said simply, and went back to coloring. Melissa froze. "Sweetheart, what did you say?" "That's the man. Doggy chased him." Her pulse quickened. "Are you sure?" Emma nodded, serious. "Doggy remembers." A month later, the district attorney decided to pursue charges, citing circumstantial evidence and a witness statement, though none expected a toddler's words to play any part. Yet as trial preparations began, every investigator involved kept recalling the same eerie consistency. Emma's details never changed. Rain, dark jacket, man running. Reed replayed the dashcam footage a dozen times. Though Rex's body cam had lost signal halfway through the chase, one blurred frame captured the same jacket color Emma described. Coincidence? Maybe, but Reed wasn't convinced. That night, he drove past Maple Street again. Leaves blanketed the ground, erasing the scars of impact. He parked near the ditch and listened. The hum of crickets, the faint rush of the creek peaceful now. Yet standing there, he could almost hear the echo of tires, the cry of a child, the bark of a loyal dog tearing through darkness. Back home, Melissa tucked Emma into bed. The little girl clutched her bunny and whispered, "Good doggy." Melissa smiled, brushing her hair back. "He helped Mommy and Emma. He's very brave." "Doggy remembers," Emma said again, eyes already closing. Outside, thunder rumbled far away. a storm retreating. Inside, mother and daughter finally slept, but the words lingered like a soft echo in the quiet house. Because somewhere in the heart of a small town, a child and a police dog shared a memory no one else could fully understand. A flash of headlights. A man in the rain, and the unspoken bond between innocence and loyalty that would one day change everything. In the days after the crash, life for Melissa and Emma had become a delicate balance between recovery and lingering fear. The hospital discharged Melissa with strict instructions, but her mind never left that night. Every creak in the house, every shadow under a tree, reminded her of the man who had fled. Yet what terrified her most wasn't the thought of him, it was the certainty in Emma's eyes. Emma's memory was sharper than anyone could have imagined. She would sit for hours on the living room rug, tracing lines in crayon, mumbling fragments of sentences that made no sense to adults. A red line across the page. Car, she said. A dark scribble near the corner? Truck. And always, doggy saw. Melissa tried to explain it as the workings of a child's imagination. You're safe, honey, she would say. Rex helped us. That was all real. But Emma's tiny frown said she wasn't convinced. It was more than imagination. She had seen, remembered, and catalogued every small detail. At night, Melissa would hear whispers from Emma's room. Doggy chased him. Mommy safe. Bad man run. Her daughter's voice trembled, but was steady, an eerie echo of clarity. Sometimes Melissa would peek in to see Emma kneeling next to her bunny, pointing at a shadow on the wall, as if Rex himself were there beside her. It wasn't just the drawings or the whispers. Emma began to recount sequences of events with frightening precision. Mommy in car. Light flash. Boom, she said one evening, banging her fist softly on the rug. Melissa's heart tightened. She remembered the exact sequence, the flash of headlights, the sound of metal, the shock that threw her world sideways. Emma's memory matched it perfectly. Melissa shared this with Officer Reed when he checked in one afternoon. He knelt to speak to Emma directly. Do you remember anything from that night? He asked gently. Emma's tiny lips pressed together, then parted. Doggy saw the man run, she said. He wear dark jacket. Her finger pointed toward the window, as if the suspect might reappear. Reed swallowed hard. The words were simple, but their accuracy was undeniable. The hat recovered, the tracks near the creek, and the blurred dashcam all aligned with her description. In months of investigation, no adult witness had provided such detail. Yet here, in the mind of a 3-year-old, the puzzle was almost complete. Melissa began documenting everything Emma said. Each phrase, each drawing, each whispered sequence became part of a growing record. She knew the court would hesitate to accept her daughter's memory, but she also knew the words couldn't be ignored. The innocence in Emma's tone carried weight that no adult's testimony could replicate. Friends and neighbors noticed subtle changes in Emma, too. She would hug Rex tighter than usual, refusing to let him out of her sight. During walks, she would point to trees and puddles, naming them in ways that matched the night of the accident. Melissa tried to explain it away to herself, as trauma remembering, but deep down, she sensed it was more a clarity, a connection, a child's truth seeing through fear and chaos. One evening, as Melissa typed up her notes, Emma climbed onto the couch beside her. "Mommy, I want to tell them," she said softly, hugging her bunny. Melissa's heart skipped. "Tell who, baby?" "The man." "The court," Emma replied. Her small fingers trembled slightly. "Doggy remembers." "I tell," Melissa hesitated. "Emma, you're very young. They might not listen. You're not supposed to testify." Emma's lips pressed together firmly, the kind of stubbornness only a child possessed. "I help Doggy," she insisted. "I help Mommy, I tell." Melissa swallowed hard. She could not argue with that level of determination. For months, she had protected her daughter from the chaos of legal proceedings, thinking Emma was too small to understand. But now it was clear the child had already understood. She remembered, she saw, and she wanted to speak. That night, Melissa tucked Emma into bed, brushing her hair and smoothing her nightgown. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "we'll talk to Officer Reed. We'll see what's best." Emma's eyes closed slowly, but her hand lingered on the bunny, tracing its ear as if it carried the night's memory. "Doggy remembers," she murmured again, almost to herself. Days passed, and Emma's insistence did not waver. Every mention of the trial sparked the same reaction, pointing toward Rex, murmuring sequences of the man's actions, and insisting that the dog remembered. Melissa began to realize that Emma's memory was not just a fragment of trauma. It was a key to the case. Officer Reed requested a formal meeting with the Warren family. In his office, he reviewed footage, evidence, and timelines. Melissa explained everything Emma had said, every drawing, every phrase. "She's just a child," Melissa said. "But she remembers things. Details no one else noticed." Reed examined the drawings and the notes carefully. The red marks, the angles, the sequence of events, all matched the recovered evidence. He felt a mix of awe and concern. He had seen children under stress, but rarely with such precise recollection. "We'll have to consider her carefully if we go to trial," he said. Melissa nodded, feeling both pride and fear. Emma was brave beyond her years, but the courtroom would be unforgiving. A toddler's memory could be dismissed, ridiculed, or challenged. Yet there was no denying her observations were accurate. Back home, Emma played with Rex in the backyard, reenacting parts of the night, tiny hands pointing, bunny in tow, her voice narrating a story only she could tell. Melissa watched silently, heart swelling. She understood that her daughter's courage was not just a whim of imagination. It was instinct, observation, and truth, delivered in the purest form a human could speak: innocence. As the trial day drew closer, Melissa prepared her daughter as best she could. She rehearsed questions gently, never forcing answers, simply reminding Emma to speak clearly and truthfully. Emma, in turn, practiced pointing at Rex whenever she mentioned the chase, her small body reflecting both determination and vulnerability. One quiet evening, Melissa asked, "Emma, do you remember the man?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Yes, Doggy saw him." "I saw him too." Melissa held back tears. That simple sentence carried the weight of months of fear, pain, and waiting. It was more than a child's memory. It was a bridge to justice. Reed checked in again, looking serious but quietly impressed. "She's remarkable," he said. "If the jury sees her as she is, her words might be exactly what this case needs." Melissa smiled, squeezing Emma's hand. "She's my hero," she whispered. The little girl yawned, snuggling against her bunny. "Doggy remembers," she murmured again, eyes closing. Melissa watched her sleep, knowing that in a few days, Emma would step into a courtroom for the first time, facing a man who had shattered their world. And yet, for all her small size and tender age, Melissa understood something profoundly simple. Emma had already seen more than anyone else. She had remembered. And she had spoken the truth. The courtroom had settled into a tense, brittle quiet. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows, reflecting off polished wood and casting long, thin shadows across the benches. Officer Daniel Reed sat near the front, Rex lying calmly at his side, the dog's eyes alert, scanning the room as though aware of what was to come. Melissa clutched Emma's small hand, her own shaking, whispering soft reassurances. The child's thumb rubbed the worn edge of her bunny. The defendant, Raymond Haskins, leaned back in his chair, smug and careless, though the tension in his jaw betrayed anxiety. He had studied legal maneuvering for years, confident that a 3-year-old's testimony could be dismissed. But he hadn't anticipated the power of innocence in its rawest form. Emma's small hand gripped her mother's. "Mommy, doggy is ready," she whispered. Melissa nodded, swallowing hard. She knew that once her daughter spoke, everything could change. The judge tapped his gavel. "Next witness," he called. Reed rose. "Officer Reed and Canine Rex," he said, steadying himself. Rex shifted slightly, ears perked, tail resting low but tense. The room seemed to hold its breath. Reed recounted the night of the crash, the chase. The evidence recovered the hat near the creek, the driver fleeing on foot, the tracks disappearing into darkness. Every word was precise, measured, a testament to months of investigation. Still, he felt the eyes of the jury drifting toward the girl on the bench, a child who had been through trauma no 3-year-old should endure. Then Melissa gently lifted Emma into her lap, placing the child on the small stool prepared for her. Emma's legs dangled, tiny feet brushing the floor. She looked across the room at Rex, then at the defendant. A faint shiver ran down Melissa's spine. The child's gaze was piercing, unnervingly focused. The judge's eyes softened as he addressed the child. "Emma, can you tell the court what you saw that night?" Emma's lips trembled. She lifted a hand, pointing at Rex. "Doggy," she whispered. A quiet murmur went through the courtroom. The adults leaned forward, intrigued. The defense attorney frowned, raising his objection. "Your Honor, this is absurd. She's a toddler. She cannot provide reliable testimony." The judge raised his hand. "Quiet. Let the child speak. We will hear her words." Emma's small voice rose, clear now, trembling with both fear and determination. "Good dog," she said, pointing at Rex. Then, louder, stronger, words that cut through every layer of doubt. "He remembers." The courtroom gasped. Reed felt his chest tighten. Those 2 words, simple, unassuming, carried the weight of months of investigation. Every officer, every lawyer, every juror realized that the child had witnessed more than they could have imagined. The innocence of her voice rendered logic secondary. Emma continued, pointing toward the defendant's table. "That man. Bad. Hurt Mommy." Her tiny hands shook, but she held them steady. "Doggy chased him." Melissa's breath caught. She had never anticipated her daughter speaking so clearly, so directly. Emma's words did not just describe the events. They asserted a truth that no adult witness could match. Rex's ears twitched. He leaned forward slightly, tail brushing the floor, a low, restrained growl vibrating in his chest. It was a subtle sound, but those in the courtroom familiar with the K-9 unit recognized it. Recognition. He remembered. He knew. The defense attorney's confident mask faltered. He waved his hands, stammering, "Objection. The child's statements are hearsay. She cannot. She's incapable." But the judge silenced him with a sharp look. "We will hear her. She is providing a first-hand account." Emma blinked, took a deep breath, and repeated her 2 words. "He remembers." The simplicity of the statement reverberated through the courtroom. Reporters leaned forward, scribbling furiously. The jury's eyes widened. Every adult present understood that those 2 words carried more than mere observation. They carried certainty, memory, and truth distilled to its purest form. Melissa held Emma close as the child continued. "Doggy saw him run," she added, pointing at the defendant. The defendant's face paled, a subtle tremor revealing fear he could no longer hide. He had been prepared for lawyers and circumstantial evidence. He had not prepared for a 3-year-old's memory and a dog's unwavering loyalty. Officer Reed felt a lump in his throat. He had known Rex was intelligent, capable, and brave. But he had never anticipated that the dog's actions, interpreted through a child's eyes, could articulate guilt more powerfully than 100 adult witnesses. A judge's gavel hovered above the desk. Let the record show the child has identified the defendant as present during the crime, corroborated by canine evidence, he said softly. His voice held awe beneath the authority. Emma's voice faltered only once when she added, "Mommy's safe now," as if reminding herself and everyone else why she spoke. Melissa's tears spilled freely. She had feared the courtroom would be cruel, that her daughter's innocence might be mocked. Instead, Emma's bravery and Rex's silent memory had created a moment of undeniable clarity. Reed's voice was calm, but tight with emotion as he continued. Rex pursued the suspect based on scent and evidence at the scene. The K-9's recordings, combined with the child's recollection, establish a direct connection to the individual fleeing after the incident. The jury shifted, murmurs passing among them. For months, evidence had been circumstantial. Now, the child's words and the dog's instincts intertwined to form a picture that was impossible to ignore. The courtroom quieted. Emma's two words lingered in the air. "He remembers." Melissa whispered softly, holding her daughter's hand. "You did it, baby." Emma's small voice replied, firm and clear, "I helped, doggy." And in that moment, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. For the first time, the intangible, the innocence of a child, the loyalty of a dog, had spoken louder than any legal argument or document. Justice, at last, had a new voice. Outside the courtroom, reporters whispered about the extraordinary testimony. Inside, adults could not look away from the tiny girl who had reminded them of something they had long forgotten. Truth does not always require eloquence. Sometimes it requires courage, clarity, and a bond between a child and a dog who never forgets. The defendant slumped slightly in his chair, realization dawning. His confidence, built on assumption and legal maneuvering, was crumbling before the truth embodied in a toddler and a loyal K-9. Rex shifted slightly, letting out a small, satisfied bark. The sound was nearly imperceptible, but for those who knew him, it was the sound of recognition, of justice in motion. The judge's eyes softened as he leaned back. "Sometimes," he murmured almost to himself, "the smallest voices speak the loudest truths." Melissa held Emma close, stroking her hair. The child's fingers brushed the worn edge of her bunny. "Doggy remembers," she repeated, eyes shining. "Yes," Melissa whispered. "And now everyone else will too." The trial had only just begun. But in that courtroom, with 2 words from a 3-year-old, and the quiet presence of a dog who had never forgotten, the path to justice had begun in earnest. No lawyer, no argument, no man could undo the truth that now hung in the air like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. And somewhere in that silence, both mother and daughter understood that sometimes the power of truth is not measured by size, age, or authority. Sometimes it comes from the heart, and the heart had just spoken, clearly and unforgettably. The courtroom had settled into a tense, anticipatory quiet after Emma's testimony. Her 2 simple words, "He remembers," had carved a path through the doubt and left the jury in a state of uneasy fascination. Officer Daniel Reed leaned slightly forward, eyes on the small girl who had just appended months of legal, maneuvering with nothing more than her memory and a child's intuition. Rex sat by his side, alert but calm, a silent witness to every unfolding moment. The district attorney, Olivia Martin, motioned to the evidence table. "Your Honor, if it pleases the court, we would like to revisit the physical evidence from the night of the incident." She gestured to the display board, photographs of the crushed minivan, the hat found near the tree line, and the scattered footprints by the creek. Melissa watched closely, holding Emma's hand. She could feel the child's pulse, rapid and small against her own. Emma's eyes never left the photographs, her lips moving softly as if recounting each moment in her mind. The defense attorney, James Caldwell, frowned. "Your Honor, this is redundant. The jury has already heard the testimony. We don't see the relevance." The judge raised a hand. "The court will hear the evidence. Proceed." Olivia began with the hat, lifting it for the jury to see. "This is the hat recovered from the scene in the woods behind Maple Street. It matches the jacket the defendant was wearing the night of the incident." She placed it on a stand, allowing the jury to examine the texture, mud, and tear marks. Reed stepped forward. "We also have K9 tracking logs from Rex's pursuit. The dog followed the scent directly from the crash site to the edge of the woods. Every turn, every hesitation matches the suspect's movements, as later confirmed by dashcam footage." The courtroom murmured. Evidence that had seemed incomplete now took shape, linked in a chain too precise to ignore. And there, in the middle of it all, Emma's small hand remained pointing toward Rex. Melissa whispered, "You see, baby? That's him." Emma nodded. "Doggy knows." The defense attorney rose, attempting to challenge the evidence. "Objection. This is circumstantial. The dog cannot testify. And the child's testimony is not scientific proof." The judge's gavel fell sharply. "Sustained in part, but the evidence will remain. The jury is instructed to consider the child's testimony alongside physical evidence." Emma's eyes remained steady, though a slight quiver ran through her small body. She understood more than anyone else that her memory was now part of a system far larger than herself. She had seen the man in the shadows, felt the fear, watched him run. And now the courtroom had to acknowledge it. Olivia continued, turning to the photographs of the tire marks and the disturbed grass. "Notice the angle of the impact," she said, pointing with a long, precise stick. "It corroborates Melissa Warren's testimony and aligns with the child's observations. The trajectory of the minivan, the position of the vehicle in the ditch, and the evidence left behind all point to a single suspect." Emma leaned forward slightly. "That's him," she said quietly. The jury members glanced at one another, some nodding, others unsure how to react to a toddler's confident statement. Reed motioned toward Rex. "The dog's instinct is trained, but it also operates on memory. Rex never forgets. His pursuit that night is consistent with every detail the child has provided. The K9 camera footage, though partially compromised, shows the movement of the suspect exactly as Emma described." Melissa swallowed hard. Her daughter's tiny voice had already altered the trajectory of the trial, but Reed's explanation of Rex's evidence now tied the child's memory to an official investigative method. Caldwell, the defense attorney, leaned forward, trying to shake the court. "The dog's memory is not admissible in court, and the child 3 years old is unreliable. We cannot base a conviction on hearsay and instinct alone." The judge's expression hardened. "The jury has been instructed to weigh testimony and evidence together. The child's observations are admissible. The dog's tracking evidence is corroborative. We will proceed." Olivia nodded, turning to the jury. "Please observe the next exhibit carefully." She held up a blurred dashcam image. Shadows flitted across the screen, the shape of a man, dark jacket, sprinting toward the tree line. The jury leaned forward. One juror whispered, "That's exactly what she said." Emma pointed. "Doggy chased him?" Her voice rang through the room, small but unwavering. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. She had feared ridicule, dismissal, and disbelief, but her daughter's words were becoming undeniable. Every photograph, every track, every grainy image now harmonized with Emma's recollection. Reed's voice was calm, but resonant as he concluded. "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is consistent. From the crash site, through the footprints, to the dashcam footage, every detail matches the child's memory and the K9's tracking. We have a clear chain of events that leads to the suspect's presence and flight from the scene. The courtroom was silent. Not a single person spoke. The impact of the child's words, combined with tangible evidence, had shifted the room's energy. Caldwell's lips tightened, his objections weaker with every passing minute. Melissa held Emma tightly. "You did it, baby," she whispered. Emma's thumb rubbed her bunny's ear, her small form radiating calm determination. Outside the courtroom, reporters and photographers waited eagerly. But inside, the focus remained on the child and the dog, the unlikely duo who had provided the crucial pieces of truth. Rex shifted slightly, tail brushing the floor, ears perked, eyes unwavering. He had never failed in his duty, but today his instinctive memory had been given voice through a child's observation. Together, they had become the most powerful witnesses the courtroom had ever seen. Olivia motioned toward Melissa and Emma. The child's recollection aligns with physical evidence. That combination is compelling. The prosecution rests on this foundation. The defense attorney rose again, attempting one final challenge. Objection. The jury cannot rely solely on circumstantial evidence, especially from a toddler. The judge shook his head. The evidence is more than circumstantial. The child's testimony corroborates the K9 and physical evidence. The jury will consider all factors. The jurors exchanged glances, some taking notes, others nodding subtly. Even those skeptical of a child's recollection could not deny the clear link between Emma's testimony and the tangible evidence presented. Melissa exhaled, finally relaxing her grip on Emma's hand. Her daughter had been small, but her words were mighty. 2 simple words, he remembers, had changed the tone of the trial and shifted the balance toward truth. As the courtroom adjourned for a short recess, Reed knelt next to Emma. "You did good, kid," he said softly. "Rex remembers too." Emma smiled faintly, patting Rex's head. "I helped Doggy," she said. Melissa's eyes blurred with tears. Her daughter's courage, clarity, and unwavering memory had given them hope when months of investigation had yielded only frustration. For the first time, she felt that justice was within reach. Outside the courtroom, the sun broke through gray clouds, scattering warm light across the building. It was symbolic, though Melissa tried not to think of it as such. Today had already changed everything. A child's innocence had spoken, a dog's memory had followed, and the truth had emerged, undeniable and compelling. Inside, Emma held her bunny tightly, her gaze shifting between Rex and the exhibits. She had not just remembered. She had delivered justice in her own way. And as the trial continued, every adult in the room, prosecutor, defense, jurors, and judge, realized something profound. Sometimes the smallest witnesses carry the loudest truth. The evidence had been revisited, and in doing so, it had become undeniable. The narrative of that night, the headlights, the screeching tires, the fleeing man, and the loyal dog was now clear, unbroken, and confirmed. And at the center of it all, Emma, with her tiny voice and unwavering conviction, had transformed a case from a maze of uncertainty into a path toward justice. Melissa whispered softly as she held her daughter's hand. "Your courage saved us all, baby." Emma's small voice replied, "Doggy remembers." And with that, the courtroom knew. The story was far from over, but the truth had found its first champions. The following days were a blur of court dates, interviews, and quiet hospital visits. Melissa tried to maintain normalcy for Emma, but the shadow of the trial stretched over every moment. Even so, one thing had become clear. The bond between Emma and Rex had grown deeper than anyone could have predicted. At home, Emma refused to let Rex out of her sight. The German shepherd followed her from room to room, tail brushing against the furniture, ears alert, as if reading her every thought. Emma's small hand rested on his head whenever she moved, fingers pressing into his fur with a familiarity that seemed almost instinctive. Melissa watched the pair one afternoon as Emma sat on the living room rug, drawing pictures of that night. Tire tracks, flashes of headlights, the dark figure of the man who had tried to escape justice. Each line, each scribble, was purposeful. Every time she drew a figure, Emma's finger would briefly tap Rex, whispering, "Doggy saw." Reed visited again, bringing paperwork and checklists for the upcoming court sessions. He paused when he saw the child and her canine, and for a moment he simply observed. The quiet trust between them was extraordinary. Rex, trained to protect, to detect, and to serve, seemed to understand every small gesture of Emma's. His eyes followed her movements, alert but calm, as if he were translating the child's observations into an unspoken language of truth. Melissa approached Reed. "I never expected this," she admitted quietly. "I thought Emma was just scared, but she's communicating with him. She understands him in a way I can't." Reed nodded. They formed a connection, the kind that goes beyond training. Dogs like Rex are loyal, but Emma, she's instinctively reading him. That bond is going to be important for the trial. And for her. Emma looked up, sensing their conversation. "Doggy knows," she said simply, patting Rex's head. Her words were confident, her small face determined. Reed crouched to her level. "Yes, he knows. And because of that, he's going to help everyone understand what happened." The next few weeks became a rhythm of preparation and protection. Melissa worked with child psychologists, ensuring Emma could testify without undue stress. Emma, meanwhile, practiced recounting details in soft tones, her finger occasionally brushing Rex's muzzle, as if the dog's presence lent her courage. One evening, Melissa found them outside in the backyard. Rain had just stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the pink and gold of sunset. Emma held her bunny, crouched down, talking softly. "Doggy saw the man," she said, pointing toward the empty street beyond their yard. Rex stood close, attentive, ears pricked. Melissa felt tears sting her eyes. It was more than loyalty. It was a partnership born of survival, trust, and instinct. Melissa knelt beside her daughter. "You're ready, honey," she whispered. "Tomorrow you'll tell the court everything you remember." Emma tilted her head, eyes serious. "Doggy remembers. I help him. We help Mommy." Melissa hugged her tightly, feeling both pride and trepidation. Tomorrow, her little girl would step into a courtroom, relying on memory, courage, and a bond that no adult could replicate. The courtroom the next day was packed. News of the child's previous testimony had spread, and curiosity filled the room. The judge took his seat, glancing at Emma and Rex. His expression held a subtle mix of concern and awe. He had seen witnesses falter, attorneys argue endlessly, but never a child and a dog who had spoken truths neither could articulate in words alone. Reed led Rex to his position, leash in hand, and Emma took her small stool near the witness stand. Melissa held her daughter's hand for a moment, squeezing gently. "We're right here, baby. You're safe." Emma nodded. "Doggy safe. I safe." The prosecutor called her forward. "Emma, can you tell us what you saw the night Mommy's car was hit?" The child's voice trembled at first. "Mommy in car, flash, boom." Her finger traced lines in the air, as if drawing the scene before them. She pointed toward Rex. Doggy chased him. Reed's eyes flicked to the defendant, whose expression was tense now. For months, he had relied on doubt, on procedural errors, on the idea that a toddler's recollection could not hold weight. But Emma's voice, coupled with Rex's presence, left little room for skepticism. Melissa held her breath. Emma's narrative continued, flowing naturally. She described the truck, the dark jacket, the way the man had run into the woods. Each detail, each small motion, was precise. When she hesitated, her hand brushed Rex's fur, as if drawing courage from the dog's memory. The judge remained quiet, letting the child speak. The courtroom felt suspended in time, every person leaning forward, listening intently. Two simple words punctuated the story repeatedly. Doggy remembers. Reed, standing nearby, felt a lump in his throat. Every officer, every juror, every spectator realized that this bond between a child and a dog had become the living embodiment of truth. It was instinct, memory, and courage combined into a force the courtroom could not ignore. The defense attorney attempted to intervene, questioning Emma about details and timelines. She responded with clarity beyond her years, her words simple but unwavering. When she faltered, a glance at Rex, a gentle nudge, reminded her she was not alone. Melissa watched, tears streaming silently, as her daughter narrated the night with unwavering accuracy. Tire marks, fleeing steps, the hat near the creek, all elements that had been pieces of a puzzle, now fit seamlessly into the picture Emma described. The dog's memory had guided her, bolstered her, and lent credibility to her words. Rex shifted slightly, tail brushing the floor. The small growl he emitted was subtle but unmistakable. Those in the know understood it. Recognition, confirmation, unwavering focus. He had witnessed the flight of the suspect firsthand, and now validated the child's words with instinctive authority. As Emma finished recounting the events, she repeated her mantra one last time. Doggy remembers. The courtroom was silent. Then a juror whispered, "She's right. It all matches." The defense attorney's objections grew weaker. The man on trial, who had relied on circumstantial arguments and procedural loopholes, slumped slightly. For the first time, he seemed unsure, exposed by the combined clarity of a child's memory and a dog's unwavering loyalty. Melissa stepped forward, cupping Emma's face gently. "You did it, baby. You were brave." Emma smiled faintly. "Doggy helped," she said. Reed nodded. "And together, you've told the truth. That's all that matters." The judge tapped his gavel lightly. "Let the record reflect the testimony and the presence of the K-9 unit. The jury is instructed to weigh the child's observations in conjunction with the physical evidence." Outside the courtroom, sunlight filtered through storm clouds, scattering warmth across the building. Inside, mother and daughter shared a quiet moment, Emma clutching her bunny and Rex resting loyally by her side. They had not only told the story, they had lived it, and now they had become its champions. Melissa realized something profoundly simple. Justice sometimes speaks not in the eloquence of adults, but in the courage of a child and the memory of a loyal companion. And in that truth, she found hope. The trial was far from over, but one thing was undeniable. The bond between Emma and Rex had shifted the balance. Their courage, clarity, and loyalty were now inseparable from the pursuit of justice. And as they walked from the courtroom together, mother, child, and dog, the future, though uncertain, felt undeniably brighter. The days leading up to the verdict were a tense storm of nerves and anticipation. Melissa found herself pacing the small living room, glancing repeatedly at Emma, who sat quietly on the rug with Rex beside her. The little girl's thumb still pressed against the worn edge of her bunny, eyes bright but serious, as if she understood the weight of what was about to unfold. Melissa had spent months trying to shield her daughter from the enormity of the legal process. But the courtroom had already transformed Emma into something extraordinary, a witness whose words had shifted the balance of a case that had seemed uncertain. Now the jury's decision loomed, and every second stretched into eternity. Officer Reed stopped by that morning, his uniform pressed, Rex obediently at his side. "Ready for today?" he asked softly. Melissa nodded, trying to steady her voice. "As ready as we'll ever be. She's amazing." Reed glanced at Emma. "She is. And Rex is too. They've done their part. Now we wait." Emma tilted her head, voice small but firm. "Doggy remembers. I help him. We help Mommy." Melissa smiled, brushing back the child's hair. "Yes, baby. You helped more than anyone knows." The courtroom that morning buzzed with a quiet tension, a stark contrast to the usual chaos of trial days. Reporters lined the back, scribbling notes, cameras poised, while jurors shuffled nervously, aware that today could finally bring closure. Haskins sat at the defendant's table, pale, hands clenched. The defense attorney whispered instructions, but there was little left to argue. The narrative had been shaped, the evidence laid bare, and the child's testimony had struck a chord impossible to ignore. Melissa held Emma's hand as they entered. The judge nodded kindly, acknowledging the little girl's bravery. Rex stayed near Officer Reed, alert, his presence a subtle but powerful reinforcement of Emma's words. Olivia Martin, the district attorney, rose and addressed the court. "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence has been presented. The child's testimony, corroborated by the canine evidence, physical evidence, and investigative work, provides a clear sequence of events. Tonight, we seek justice for Melissa Warren and her daughter, Emma." A defense attorney rose, attempting one last appeal. "Your Honor, the prosecution's case relies heavily on the recollection of a 3-year-old. Circumstantial evidence, emotional appeal, and interpretation of a dog's behavior cannot constitute proof beyond a reasonable doubt." The judge raised a hand. "The jury has been instructed to weigh all testimony and evidence. The court will now hear closing statements and then proceed to deliberation." Melissa felt her heart pound. Every step of the trial had been taxing, but today the future of justice rested on the decision of 12 strangers and the small, unwavering truth carried by her daughter. The child sat quietly during closing statements, her small fingers brushing Rex's fur. The dog rested his head near her knees, ears pricked, eyes scanning the courtroom. Melissa felt a lump in her throat. The scene was surreal. She had spent months worried that a toddler's memory might falter under pressure. But Emma had remained steady, her courage unwavering, her bond with Rex unbreakable. The jury retired to deliberate. Melissa and Emma waited in the observation room, Rex lying at their feet. The minutes stretched into hours, each one heavier than the last. Melissa tried to occupy herself, but her mind circled constantly. Did they believe her daughter? Could the jury see the truth in the way a child and a dog had experienced it? Emma broke the silence. "Doggy remembers," she whispered. Her words were calm now, matter of fact, yet carried a weight far beyond her years. Melissa smiled, brushing back her daughter's hair. "I know, baby. I know." Outside, the courthouse waited quietly, a few reporters pacing nervously, cameras ready. Reed stayed near the door, Rex obediently at his side. He had faith in the evidence, but he also knew the unpredictability of human judgment. For months, he had relied on facts, instincts, and training. But today, he understood that truth sometimes came in forms unexpected: a child, a dog, and the courage to speak what was seen. Inside, Melissa held Emma, stroking her hair. The little girl leaned into her mother, whispering again, "We help, Mommy." Melissa nodded, tears threatening to spill. "Yes, baby. You helped Mommy." Hours later, the jury returned. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the foreperson rose, papers in hand. Melissa gripped Emma's hand tightly, her thumb rubbing reassuringly against the small fingers wrapped around hers. The foreperson cleared their throat. "We, the jury, find the defendant." A pause stretched through the room. Every eye focused on the foreperson, every breath held. "Guilty on all counts." The words hit Melissa like a tidal wave. Tears streamed freely as she hugged Emma close, feeling her daughter tremble with relief and understanding. "You did it, baby." "You helped," Melissa whispered. Emma's small voice carried over the soft murmurs in the courtroom. "Doggy remembers." Reed exhaled, placing a steady hand on Rex's back. The dog lifted his head slightly, ears alert, as if acknowledging the culmination of months of effort. Together, child and canine had spoken truth into reality. The defendant slumped in his chair, eyes wide, finally comprehending the weight of the evidence and the courtroom's decision. He had relied on adult reasoning, manipulation, and procedural loopholes, but he had not accounted for the clarity of a 3-year-old's memory or the unwavering instincts of a police dog. Melissa felt a profound sense of closure. Months of fear, pain, and uncertainty had led to this moment. Justice, slow but relentless, had prevailed. And at the heart of it, Emma's courage, precision, and bond with Rex had made the difference. After the courtroom emptied, Melissa knelt beside Emma in the now quiet space. The little girl hugged Rex tightly, burying her face in his fur. "Doggy remembers," she said softly, almost to herself. "Yes, he does," Melissa whispered, tears streaming. "And everyone else remembers now, too." Reed approached, his expression gentle but proud. "The child's testimony, combined with Rex's tracking, has been extraordinary. You both should be proud." Emma looked up, eyes bright and unwavering. "I helped Doggy. We helped Mommy." Melissa hugged her tightly. "Yes, baby. You helped all of us." Outside, the courthouse steps glistened in the afternoon sun. Reporters snapped photos, capturing the moment the Warren family left the building together. Emma held her bunny, Rex beside her, a small figure of bravery and innocence at the center of a story that had captivated the nation. Melissa realized something she had known but never fully felt until now. Truth, courage, and love sometimes came in the smallest packages. A child, a dog, and the memory they shared altered the course of events, transforming fear into justice. As they walked down the steps, hand in hand, mother, daughter, and dog, Melissa whispered, "The world will remember this, baby." "And so will I?" Emma looked up, smiling faintly. Her words simple but profound. "Doggy remembers." And with that, their story, one of bravery, memory, and unbreakable bonds, had reached a turning point. Justice had been served, but the impact of those two voices, one human, one canine, would echo far beyond the courtroom walls. Melissa felt a quiet, triumphant relief. She had feared for her daughter, feared the limitations of human understanding. But Emma had proven that courage and truth were not measured by age, and that sometimes the most profound witnesses were those who spoke with honesty, heart, and the unshakable clarity of experience. The courtroom drama had ended, but the world outside seemed quieter, softer, almost reverent in its stillness. Melissa walked down the courthouse steps with Emma tucked safely by her side, Rex trotting loyally at her heels. Sunlight broke through the clouds, scattering across the pavement like a promise. The verdict had been delivered, justice finally served, and yet, for Melissa, the journey of healing had only just begun. Emma's small hand clutched her bunny, her gaze shifting between the crowd of reporters and Rex. Her voice was quiet, but firm. "Doggy remembers." Those two words had changed everything, echoing far beyond the walls of the courthouse. The nation had witnessed the bond between a child and a dog, a bond that transcended age, fear, and circumstance. Melissa exhaled, tears spilling freely. Yes, baby. Everyone remembers now. And everyone knows the truth. Back at home, life slowly settled into a gentle rhythm. The media interest persisted for weeks, but Melissa shielded Emma from most of it. She understood that her daughter's story had become something extraordinary, but Emma's childhood had to be preserved. School visits, therapy sessions, and quiet evenings at home replaced the chaos of court dates and public scrutiny. Rex remained a constant presence, an anchor of stability. Emma's bond with him deepened even further, their routines intertwining in subtle ways. She would whisper to him before bed, recounting the day's events, as though reinforcing the memory that had brought them justice. "Doggy saw. We did good," she would say, tracing his fur with her tiny fingers. Melissa watched these moments quietly, marveling at the clarity and confidence her daughter now possessed. Trauma had visited them. Fear had threatened their peace, but Emma's bravery, combined with Rex's loyalty, had forged a resilience that nothing could diminish. Melissa began sharing her story with close friends, support groups, and officers who had been part of the investigation. Each recounting emphasized the unlikely partnership between her daughter and the canine. It wasn't just evidence, she explained. It was a child's memory, a dog's instinct, and a bond stronger than fear. Officer Reed smiled whenever he visited. "I've worked with canine units for years," he said one afternoon, "but I've never seen anything like this. They weren't just witnesses, they were partners in justice." Emma, sitting cross-legged on the rug with Rex beside her, nodded solemnly. "I helped Doggy," she said simply. Melissa laughed softly, brushing back her daughter's hair. "Yes, baby. You helped more than anyone else could." Community support poured in over the following months. Neighbors left cards, letters of encouragement arrived, and local news outlets interviewed Melissa, carefully framing the story to highlight Emma's courage and Rex's loyalty. The narrative of fear transformed into a tale of triumph, resilience, and the extraordinary capabilities of innocence and trust. At school, Emma became something of a quiet hero. Children whispered about the little girl who had bravely testified in court, but Emma remained humble. She carried her bunny, held Rex's paw when she walked past, and quietly observed the world. There was no boastfulness, only a steady, calm presence that seemed older than her years. Melissa noticed that Emma's storytelling skills had grown as well. Through drawings and whispered accounts, she processed the traumatic night with remarkable clarity. Every detail was remembered, catalogued, and understood, and every memory reaffirmed her bond with Rex. Months later, Melissa and Emma returned to the site of the accident, not out of fear, but as a way of reclaiming peace. The creek flowed gently, the grass was green, and sunlight reflected off the water in shimmering patterns. Emma skipped rocks along the edge, occasionally glancing at Rex, who stayed close. "Doggy remembers," she said softly, as if reminding herself and the world of their triumph. Melissa knelt beside her, brushing back a stray lock of hair. "Yes, baby. He remembers, and so do we." They lingered by the water for a long time, speaking little. There was no need. The silence carried gratitude, relief, and the quiet joy of survival. The defendant's sentencing occurred quietly. He was given a lengthy term, a formal acknowledgement of the fear, danger, and disruption he had caused. Melissa did not attend in person. She didn't need to. Justice had already been realized in the courtroom months before, in Emma's unwavering words and Rex's silent testimony. Instead, she stayed home with her daughter, creating a small ceremony of their own. A framed drawing of the night's events was placed on the mantel, beside a photograph of Emma and Rex. "This is our story," Melissa said, her voice steady. "You and Rex our heroes." Emma touched the drawing, then Rex's head. "Doggy helped." "I helped," she said. "Yes, baby. You both helped," Melissa replied, her heart full. In the weeks and months that followed, their life settled into something resembling normalcy. Melissa returned to work part-time, balancing the demands of her career with the need to nurture and protect her daughter. Emma attended preschool, learned new skills, and grew more confident with every passing day. And through it all, Rex remained by her side, a sentinel, a companion, and a living reminder of bravery and loyalty. Melissa often marveled at the quiet power of her daughter's memory. At 3 years old, Emma had witnessed trauma, recalled events with clarity, and delivered truth that adults and law enforcement had struggled to piece together. Her courage had been extraordinary, but it was the bond with Rex, the shared trust, the intuitive understanding, that had amplified her voice in ways no one had anticipated. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Melissa, Emma, and Rex sat on the porch together. Emma's bunny rested on her lap, Rex's head on her small knees. Melissa sipped her tea quietly, watching them. "Mommy," Emma whispered, "we did good." Melissa smiled, brushing her daughter's hair from her eyes. "Yes, baby. We did more than good. We were brave, and we told the truth." Emma nodded, eyes wide and serene. "Doggy remembers." Melissa's heart swelled. Those simple words had carried them through fear, through uncertainty, and into justice. And now, as the world slowed around them, they carried a different kind of power, a reminder that courage, memory, and love often come in the smallest, quietest forms. Rex shifted slightly, leaning against Emma, a soft sigh of contentment escaping his muzzle. The trio sat together, 3 souls intertwined by experience, trauma, and unwavering loyalty. Outside, the first stars began to appear, and the night held a peaceful quiet that Melissa knew would last. For Emma, for Melissa, for Rex, life would never be the same, but it would be full of hope, courage, and the enduring power of truth. The world had witnessed their story, yes, but at home, it was simply life. Mother, daughter, and dog, together. Melissa whispered into the twilight, "We'll always remember, baby." "And so will Rex." Emma smiled, patting the dog's head. "Doggy remembers," she repeated. And in that repetition, it was more than memory. It was triumph, survival, and an unbreakable bond that would last a lifetime.